Let's take a look at After Effects. This is your main composition area. Off to this side is your project area that also doubles as your effects controls when you have effects on it. This is your composition area, and this is going to be your timeline. You create a new composition and need a composition in order to do anything in After Effects. You can click here, or you could go under Composition, New Composition. Give your composition a name. You could just, main is a good name. What's the size of this composition? Under presets, you could choose HD 1920 by 1080 at 29.97 frames per second. That might be a good choice. Duration of your composition. The duration is linked to your time code. The time code's currently in frames. So this would be 30 frames per second, 15-second composition, square pixels, and click OK. Now if you want to toggle between time codes, seconds, and frames, hold down the Command key and click. Basic tool sets up here. These will be the assets once you click on the project. There's our main. To change the name of the main, just select that composition, press the Enter key, and you could say main final. You're working towards this final composition. After Effects will render this color black as the background. However, your compositions are actually transparent, and only when you render them do they become a solid color in the video. So when you combine compositions, remember they're output out. Let's create a piece of art, and when I say that, I'm just going to use the T key and say word cat. Why not the word cat? Off on the right side under here, you can adjust the font, Helvetica, bold. This is the current point size. Let's say it's 120. Centering, centered within that container. Left, centered, right. And at the end is alignment on the screen itself, like this. Now, taking a look at the character, 120, if I make this bigger, point size is still 120 pixels. If I look under scale, pressing the S key, this is the scale. So size of the font times what it was scaled at equals this number. If you want to be consistent throughout your layout, don't just scale your type. Make it bigger, like this, uniform. So return it to 100, 100% like this. And I did a little shortcut there. S key will toggle on and off the scale property for a layer. P key is position. T is for opacity. Those are the main ones you'll use. And of course, R for rotation. Those are the main ones you'll actually use. If you want to see everything at once, just click that triangle, go into transformation, and there's your main ones for this object. Your object might have different properties, including 3D properties. So here's your artwork. Let me make it 200 pixels. I'll recenter that if I need to. Centered. To help out, you can turn on your grid right up here. So title, action, safe, or proportional grid. This helps you align things in your view. Let's go here. Grid. There's your grid. Might be a little too deep to stare at, especially late at night. So you can turn off your grid. Clicking there, grid is off. Your guides. Pressing Command R will toggle on and off your ruler. So you can drag down a guide in case you need it. Command R will still keep that guide up there. If you need to toggle on and off your guide, clicking under here, guides off, guides on, and you can also see there was the ruler. Command R. So I'm going to throw out this guide, just drag it up into Infinity Land, and it'll disappear. What can you do to animate this object? Well, let's just make an animation to begin with. Let's do a simple scale animation. S key shows scale. This is your timeline, and we'll get back to your composition layers in a moment. Clicking the stopwatch will drop a keyframe here. Unclicking the stopwatch will remove that keyframe and all keyframes on that layer, so be careful about that. So, on. Let me go 10 frames over, so that's Command Shift right key will jump 10 frames. Command left or right is 1 frame at a time. I'm going to drop another keyframe here without moving this object. If I scale the object, it puts a keyframe. But if I just want this to be the same 100%, just click this dot right here, and I'll add a keyframe there, or might remove it. Now I'm going to go back to the first keyframe and start from 0. To do that, easiest way is just to click here. Click. And this jumps between keyframes. So here, maybe its size was like 20. So clicking in here, 20. Since it's linked, it's proportional. Playing this animation, spacebar. There's your cat zooming up. Now, where does it zoom up from is the pivot point right there. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to zoom in using my Willy mouse to zoom in and zoom out. You can use the magnifying glass tool up here to zoom out, zoom in and zoom out, the Z key, also the hand tool or spacebar to pan over. This application behaves a lot like Illustrator, so if you're used to shortcuts there, you're used to them here as well. Now my cat is a little lower. Since I don't have a position key, I'm free to just move this. And where it zooms around is this pivot point. You press the Y key to select the anchor. You could just drag that up towards the center, and that will be the center of transformation, move, rotations, and scales. Now it's freeformed, so turn on snapping, and you'll feel it or see it snap more towards the center of things. Now, if you're not happy where it's snapping, you can turn off snapping, just drag it down. Now you're holding this anchor tool. Pick up the next tool, like the V key for select here, so you're not stuck in anchor mode. You only can hold one tool at a time, and holding the anchor tool isn't a fun tool because it can mess up your compositions. Zooming back out, I'm using my Willy mouse. You could also, here, toggle the size as well. Pressing spacebar, there's our cat. Just zooming on in, a little stuttering and all. To make this a little more interesting without playing with the types of keys, instead of just going here and stopping, we can right click and make it ease into this. What if, instead of hitting 100 right here, if I just go back 2 frames, 1, 2, or 3, and say, you know what, at that point you're 110. Boom. So it's going to get big and then jump back. So you can see it adds a little pop to that. And that will toggle between Graph Editor and the timeline. If I want to migrate these keys, I want this to take a little longer. Holding down, selecting your keys and holding down the option and drag will proportionally drag apart these keys. It takes a lot more time for that to happen. Okay, let's talk about trimming. Trimming is where you'll cut the layer. Let's say I just want this to disappear. So if I select this layer, hold down the option and the right bracket, we'll trim the outside. Now you can see, even though I'm here, this frame exists from here to there, and that's why even though I trimmed it here, it still exists, and here. If I want to trim the beginning of this animation, maybe I just need this part, this soft movement. Selecting this layer, option key, left bracket, trims it there. Even though the key still exists, it's not being seen because that part is hidden. So nothing, and then there's this. I could migrate this whole clip to the playback head by just selecting the clip, and if I wanted to move to this side of the playback head, press the left bracket without the option key. We'll just pull that layer over like this. So why would you do such a thing like this? Well, let me undo this. Let's see this full animation, and let me migrate these keys so it's a little quicker. Like this, I'll trim it. Let's say at frame 16, option click here. We can offset this animation and just have it pop up now. I just looked at that as a preview and it happens a little too quick, so I migrated those keys. That's a little better. And I'm going to end my animation at, let's say, 20 frames out. Let's make it a full second, actually. I'll end this whole animation at 30 frames out, pressing the N key for the ending of this workspace. And I want this to live at the end of this workspace. So selecting this layer, pressing the with that layer selected, seeing the option right bracket will extend that layer until that moment. So we have this so far. I'm going to repeat this layer, Command D, and I'll offset it a little bit, and I'll move over. Now we'll have cat, cat. If I move it over a little more, we can start having these words, Command D, go here. I want this layer actually, and I'll migrate that here. Command D, move it over. So Command D duplicates a layer. And again, I should really just select that one. Let me nudge it over like this. And you can see you could quickly fill out a scene with just a very simple animation. Of course, as motion designers, we can add a lot more subtle detail than this. But it doesn't take much to start to build a scene out. I want to balance it before I just continue with the next subject. Command D again. And when I say balance, there's an empty space down here. So let me move that off to this side. Kind of get this little asymmetry going. All this extra stuff doesn't matter. But if you want to be neat about it, you can select all those layers and press Option right bracket to trim them. I'll go one more frame over, so Command right arrow. I'll step over one frame, and since these are still selected, Option bracket to trim. So you have this going, cool. But you want more, you want it to be everywhere. That's where pre-composition could come in handy. Let me close this one by toggling. So I'm going to select all these layers, right click, and pre-compose. Now a place to see it, since that was off screen, is to go to Layer, Pre-compose. So right clicking gets you there. I want to move all my attributes inside. You sometimes give an option to leave them outside. Usually you want to move everything on the inside, and we're going to just call this layer the cat layer. You can see to your project window is now this cat layer, which is its own composition. If I double click in there, there's the cat layer, our original animation. And our main timeline has that pre-composed version of this. If I press Command D with that layer selected, and I'll offset it, let's say here, you can see that now we can quickly fill out this scene with lots and lots of cats. So let me not move it here, I'm just going to move it over here. Now instead of this word cat and making sure it doesn't collide, it could be anything. You can also add special effects to each layer, whether it's blurring or colorization. Let me delete my layers. Delete that one, delete that one. I could delete all of them, just go back to the original cat layer by just dragging it and dropping it down here. Let me blur things. So selecting this layer, going under on the right side, going under effects. I want a fast box blur. I'll just type in blur. Fast box blurs will happen a lot quicker. So right here, I'll select my fast box blur. You can drag it here or onto the layer. Layers are a little more accurate because you might accidentally click on things out there. And I forgot to save this, so I'll just call it cat for now. Command S. So maybe the reveal, it could have been a fade up, is the blurriness like this, and then everything comes in focus. So I clicked right here to put my first keyframe, drop a keyframe, and as that happens, everything becomes in focus down to 0. If I press the U key, I can see that there's my blur. So the U key will toggle on all the property layers that have keyframes. That's beginning to feel a little better. You can individually go back and start to place special effects on each one of these. If you just want a global effect going on, such as colorization layers, layer style, and we just want to colorize it, we could do glows and things like that, and that will be fun as well. I just want to colorize things, just go to color overlay. So instantly you have color on your layer, and did that without having to touch the type. The original layer is still protected here with this type. Here you're adding effect to that pre-comped layer to make a global change on that. Under your layer, if you click on it, you go under layer style, under color overlay, you get to choose a different color, and you get to choose how it interacts with the other layers. That was some fluorescent green cat animation. So those are some of the pure basics of After Effects.